Larry Berger has enjoyed a lot of inside access to A-list celebrities, athletes. He tells a lot of great stories over his storied career in sports media, and he is currently senior producer, operations lead, USA Today Sports. He does all sorts of interviews, is in charge of a lot of different content from a lot of different places as far as different sites and editorial programs. He has a very busy schedule as far as what he has to oversee. So just finding time here, Larry, to get you on. I can't tell you how many people I had to go through, but we are super grateful for you because this is an opportunity where for you always getting inside access to others, now we're to get inside access into you. And you are the celebrity, the A-lister here, as we sort of flip the script in something that you're used to as an interviewer. And now you are the interviewee, and we look at your life. We look at what makes you inspirational. And this is the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio, on Twitter at Bryan Fenley. So, Larry, I appreciate you doing this. And as far as the content you've put out, it's been incredible stuff. You have on-camera interviews that you've done with the likes of Wayne Gretzky. The list goes on. And one of the things that I know you tap into with them is how they are able to reach peak performance. What does peak performance look like for you as a journalist?
Bryan, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be talking with you. In terms of peak performance, it comes down to a few things. Preparation. You have to know what you're talking about. In doing an interview, if you don't know the subject cold and you can't carry on a conversation and organically throw in tidbits of information about the subject's career or applicable topics related to the topic that you're discussing, you're at a big disadvantage. And not only are you shortchanging your readers and your viewers, but you're also not extracting the best possible interview from the subject. I feel like you have to gain credibility through the quality of your questions and the knowledge that you have on the subject. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is, to really tell a story, to be able to tell a story. That's what we do, is tell stories. So if we're sticking with the interviewing, being able to acquire the content that you need to go back to the edit room to tell the story effectively. So those are the key factors. There's quite a few other key factors that go into your insightful question, but right off the top, I would say that those are two of the most important ones.
When have you found, Larry, that in these interviews that you've done, where more often than not, and perhaps there's more than one circumstance, where you have become so emotionally invested in the story of the interviewee, where it just hits you from you being human and you really having a reaction to what the story is being told from your interviewee's perspective?
There are so many examples, to pick from. I get emotionally involved in every one of them because of the whole process of studying before the interview, and and my knowledge that already exists within me. I do get emotionally involved. But if I had to narrow it down to one project, I helped spearhead the NBA's historical preservation project. So I had carte blanche to travel the country and interview the oldest living players, coaches, announcers, equipment managers, whatever, associated with the earliest days of the NBA. So guys that played in the 40s and the 50s, men like Fred Schaus, Butch Van Bredikoff, who I tracked down to a nursing home in Spokane, Washington, and interviewed him right before he passed away. Kenny Sailors, who's credited with inventing the jump shot, tracked him down to Laramie, Wyoming. But to talk to them about their careers and to see them get emotionally choked up about what was the most special times in their lives, that really hits home. And being able to, through research, find out about their teammates and who they played with in college and in the pros and the big games that they had. And, it's what's so beautiful about sports. It's so emotional, it's inspirational. And to be able to talk to these gentlemen about what happened in their lives 50, 60 plus years ago and how it hits home to them, it's contagious. And it really got me as well.
Larry, how is it that you are able to get in talking to these guys from many years ago in the NBA and tell their stories and remember the nitty gritty of everything they're saying, the stats, where they played, the stories, and it all seems to have space in your mind, in your memory. And it doesn't matter how far back you go when you talk to these folks, but it's a little bit harder to remember what you had for breakfast that morning. What is it about the way your brain is wired, Larry, where you are able to take in this information, go across the country, and have a stored place for all of these great nuggets of info from everybody you interview and all the sports history, but then the things that you do on a daily basis, it sort of seemingly gets lost in things.
Yeah. It all started when I was in kindergarten. My mom always tells a story. I had a shopping bag full of baseball cards, and my mom would cover up 3/4 of the card, cover it up like that. And I would see the sky in the background of the card in kindergarten and could basically tell you with a 95+% effective rate of who that player was depicted on the card. It's a passion of mine. And like everybody has their passion. And I'm just fortunate enough that my passion is my career. But I love it. I would say that literally every day of my life thus far, I've devoted to sports in some measure, be it a few minutes, be it a few hours, but every day of my life I've devoted to sports, not because I've had to, but because I love it. And the history and the stories and the way it galvanizes people is something very, very special. And I think I'll always have that passion. And with that passion comes a lot of useless knowledge. I have a ton of useless knowledge, but to me it's useful, and it's very comforting. It's a lot of times, when life throws you a curveball and you have your good days and your bad days, but I find that this knowledge is almost like the grilled cheese sandwich, the tomato soup. It's very very calming. So it's a blessing that I'm able to have these memories with me.
Larry Berger is my guest with USA Today Sports. This is the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. So, Larry, if I were to design a baseball card of you, what would you like to be written on the back of the card in describing you?
First of all, there would be a lot of years for stats, because I was thinking about this the other day. I still play softball in my Wyckoff softball league here in Wyckoff, New Jersey. But I started playing organized baseball when I was 7. So you know how they have for each year they have the team you played for, your stats. So they would be like microscopic. The back of the baseball card, you'd need a magnifying glass to see every year. But I think what I'd like to be said about me is that this is my passion. This is my love. Telling stories, hearing stories. I still reflect on the family vacations we took when I was 7 years old, and when we went to Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame inductions, and getting to meet Satchel Paige and Bill Terry and Bill Dickey and Joe Sewell, and guys that played in the turn of the century, that played 100+ years ago. I still have the autographed baseballs. I still have the memories. And now with the advent of the internet, I really get to really find out what these gentlemen that were so kind to me, many, many years ago when I was a 7-year-old, find out about their impact. And it really, you talk about being educated and knowing all these different things. It builds momentum when you have these great events and you want to find out more about them. And, they played with this person. Let me find out about this one. I wake up at 3:00 in the morning sometimes. My phone is right next to me. And I do a search, and Bryan, I would imagine maybe you do the same thing. But, you're curious about, who was on John Wooden's championship winning teams at UCLA, and I get to put a personal spin to that because I was in John Wooden's home in Encino, California with Gail Goodrich, interviewing him for hours about his life and his career and talking to him after the interview. So, it's all connected. So anyway, to answer your question, on the back of my baseball card, someone who's truly passionate about sports and its rich history.
For all of the autographs that you have of players that you mentioned and others, I'm sure you have a humongous spot in your house with all sorts of sporting memorabilia. But there was a time, Larry, when your son signed an autograph for a baseball player. And with the advent of internet, which you mentioned, it's something that went viral. How did this all come to play?
You're talking about Anthony Volpe, who is one of the kindest young men I've ever met. He is the number one prospect in the Yankees organization. And we went to a Hudson Valley Renegades game. That's high A for the Yankees. And my son made a sign, Anthony Volpe's biggest fan. And it caught the attention of Anthony. And after the game, they hit it off. My son is 5 years old and Volpe is 20. And they just started talking. And Anthony Volpe took off his baseball cap that he was wearing. This is right after the game. And he asked my son to autograph it. So my son writes in all capital letters, and he signed the inside of his cap, and he wore that cap the rest of the season.
Oh, wow.
They also took a picture together. And then a couple of days later, we went back and we asked Anthony Volpe to sign the picture of my son with him. And we, to get it framed for his room, for his bedroom. And we had an extra copy of the picture. So Anthony asked, "Do you mind if I have this?"
Oh.
And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Would you mind having your son autograph it to me?" And he did. And it was just a truly remarkable experience. My son signing the autograph to Anthony, and he signs his name. And, it just goes to show you what kind of a young man that Anthony Volpe is and the type of impact that athletes can make on kids. My son is now so interested in Anthony Volpe and baseball as a whole because of this tremendous experience. And of course, you mentioned the video. It was on Sportskind or Humankind, and it's racked up. I think the last time I saw it, well over 250,000 views. So, but my son doesn't understand the magnitude of it. He's just like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." But he does understand that it was a special event, and he will now be a lifelong Anthony Volpe fan.
In what ways, Larry, does your son pattern after you?
He loves sports. He loves playing sports. He loves, I wouldn't say he loves watching sports. He's into NASCAR. He follows NASCAR. And I love NASCAR too. But what I find so great about NASCAR is that there's a limited number of drivers, and they're attached to a number, and it's very educational. So there aren't let's say for NASCAR there's 10 superstars in NASCAR: Logano, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and a few others. So I think it's manageable where he can really get a real grasp on understanding the whole circuit. Also, in working at home, I've gotten the opportunity to interview quite a few NASCAR drivers on Zoom. Richard Petty, Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, to name a few. And my son is right there. And he always seems to interrupt at some point. And the drivers love it. And my son, talks about how he has their die-cast car, and he holds up their little die-cast car. They get a kick out of that. So I would say my son is like me in that he has a budding passion for following sports, of finding out about the athletes and what makes them tick and what they like, what they don't like. And he also loves to play sports. He's playing golf right now, and he's crushing the ball. I'm a little biased in saying that because I'm his dad, but he's really hitting the ball well. And the most important thing is that he enjoys it. And it's healthy, and I fully endorse it. As long as as long as he enjoys it, loves coming to my softball games. As long as he enjoys it, we're going to pursue this as far as can be.
Yeah, I love this. I look forward to hearing how he continues to beat you in golf as the weather
Well,
gets
his
better.
swing is incredible. I mean, he's a 5-year-old. He crushes the bug, which is the back foot. He's really good. We've played 18 holes twice on a par 3 course. He gets through about 11, 12. But you know what? Same with me too. And we lose a little interest afterwards. But he loves it, and that to me makes me very happy.
And I also think it must be happy in that he gets so much enjoyment out of what you do and seeing what you're doing and having interest in it and listening in interviews and like NASCAR guys you're talking about. And for you, and you being in the driver's seat, if you will, of your own career, and you look at it from where you started to where you are now, Larry, when was the time that you needed to believe in yourself the most to get through something, to get to the other side?
Often, very often. This industry, I can't speak about the other industries, but this industry is very, very difficult. And you could either be the best ever, the worst ever, somewhere in between. Most of the times you don't know. You don't know where you are on that pecking order. And you really have to believe in yourself. And it takes a lot of mental toughness, because there are a lot of setbacks. There's a lot of no's. There's a lot of detractors. I always like to say, when you're in college, they tell you how your idea will work, how it can work. When you become a professional, they tell you how your idea can't work and why it won't work. And you have to really be confident in yourself, but also don't lie to yourself. But you have to be confident in your abilities and understand that somebody will take a chance on you. And your abilities, your skill set is valuable, and you will eventually turn it around. So yeah, that's occurred to me a couple of times, but it's like chutes and ladders. That's what this profession, that's what life is all about, right? It's chutes and ladders. You hope for that big ladder up, and sometimes you get the big chute down. But generally speaking, there's little ladders and little chutes. You just got to ride with it. But you have to take inventory of yourself. Don't be true to yourself. Do you really have something to offer? Are you good? Do you have the relationships, which is the most important thing? And if you say yes, then the odds are you will succeed. But there are trying times. There's no doubt about it. There are some very trying times.
And even though those trying times have come, who taught you, Larry, that persistence would get you through, in the sense that no matter what is happening, that failure was never going to be an option for you?
Well, it's persistence, definitely, but it's also creativity. You can't, being persistent to me is doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over again, which could work. But also, give you one example. When I was out of work, I got laid off from the NBA after 16 years. I loved it there. Fabulous organization. I got laid off in 2008. I had to figure out how to provide myself an edge, because bottom line is, if you go the conventional route, there's a job listing, there's 2,500 resumes, and odds are it'll be filled internally, or the hiring manager will know somebody who knows somebody, or a relative, or whatever. So I went to the Devils arena. I'm a big Devils fan. I grew up a big Devils fan. And so I went to the Devils arena, and I saw a parking spot. It said reserved for Lou Lamoriello, general manager. So I went there with my suit and tie and figured he'd get to work around 9 o'clock. I showed up at like 8:50, bam, like clockwork. He shows up at 9:00. And I had my elevator pitch ready. It's 10 to 15 seconds of who you are, what you've accomplished, what you can do for him, and that sort of thing in 12 to 15 seconds. So he gets out of his car, I think it was a Mercedes, and he walks like the 15 seconds to the front door. And within that time, I was able to get an interview with him.
Wow.
And it never materialized, but that is the thinking that I think people need to have. Not exactly that, no stalking or anything along those lines, but you have to say to yourself, how am I going to provide myself an edge? Because if you go the conventional route, you have no shot. And to me, the edge comes from who are the alums, who prays at the same church or temple that you do, who is in your fraternity or sorority, any way that you can have an in, on a basis beyond, work, that's how you do it. That's a starting point. And again, like production, it's a feel thing. There's no right or wrong. It's like, if you do what I just said, will you definitely get a job? No, but it's a feel thing. It gets the mind working in the right way, in my opinion. There's many ways to get a job, but I think, like, you really, in this day and age, when everybody wants to get into some form of sports, I think you really have to be creative.
I love that. Creativity is important, and creating creativity can help you create opportunities for yourself, because, as you know, rarely are opportunities just going to come to you. You've got to want them really badly. And I love the way in which you would, on your own time, set yourself up to introduce yourself to these people, because that's what it takes. When I see that from somebody, Larry, I know that person is going to make it. Like you said, maybe that particular interview didn't lead to something, but having that psyche, that mindset, by the law of averages, ultimately is going to bode well for that person. And it has for you. And it's so cool to see everything you are doing and continue to do. Larry, would love to do a part 2 of this conversation. This was a lot of fun looking at your career. Larry Berger, USA Today Sports. I'm Bryan Fenley with Fox Sports Radio. This is the On to Something podcast. Larry, thanks so much for giving us a glimpse into your life, into your rise in the business, how badly you had to work to get to where you are, and all the neat things you are doing today.
Bryan, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much. And anytime you want a part 2, I'm there.